This is Focus on Africa from BBC World News. I'm Sophie Ikenye. Our top stories. Algeria's parliament appoints an interim president, but protesters say he's too close to the outgoing leader.
We are here, so the ones who are governing the country should leave, because they are robbing, not building the country. They are destroying it.
Time for transition. Growing calls for Sudan's President al-Bashir to stand down.
We need really the international community to stand up in solidarity with our people in Sudan.
Also in the program, a breath of dirty air, how air pollution on the continent could be dangerous for our health.
We are seeing with our statistics that the numbers are really increasing, and we believe it's linked to air pollution, well, to air quality, which is very bad.
And in sports, Algeria international Nabil Bentaleb resumes training with his club today, 3 weeks after he was dropped for disciplinary reasons. Thanks for joining us on Focus on Africa from BBC World News. Algeria's parliament has appointed an interim leader to succeed former President Abdelaziz Bouteflika. But many protesters seeking more radical change don't want him. Now, Abdelkader Ben Salah is a Speaker of the Upper House of Parliament. He's expected to lead the country during a transition period in the run-up to a presidential election. Now, the former president, Abdelaziz Bouteflika, resigned last week following a series of huge anti-government protests. Daniel Henry reports.
This is Abdelkader Ben Salah, Algeria's new president for the next 90 days. He can't run for permanent office, but even if he could, it doesn't look like he'd pick up many votes. The protesters that pushed out President Bouteflika after 20 years are calling for Mr. Ben Salah to go within hours of him swearing in.
We have come out today in order to oppose Ben Salah. Ben Salah, leave. We don't need you.
The demonstrators are demanding not just a change of leader, but to completely dismantle everything connected to Bouteflika's regime.
We are here today for the demands of the people. Let the people come out victorious.
We are here, so the ones who are governing the country should leave, because they are robbing, not building the country. They are destroying it.
The 77-year-old was a very close ally of the former president. He was also Speaker to the Upper Chamber and has been a member of the Upper House since 2002. Today, opposition parties refused to back his appointment and boycotted the session.
We are faced with a collective national duty which dictates that we create the most appropriate conditions to guide the next period in the short term, with all the necessary conditions to accelerate the creation of a new era for the nation.
Whether he'll be able to follow through on his vow is a question that only the Algerian people can answer. Daniel Henry, BBC News.
Well, joining me here in the studio is Nahed Abu Zaid from the BBC's Arabic service. Thanks for taking time to talk to us.
Pleasure.
They don't want him. What do they have against him?
Well, before that, let's talk about the number of things that are going for Ben Saleh, as it were. Ben Saleh is not a controversial figure. He has not been marred with any accusations of nepotism or fraud or any of that sort. He is a politician with a lot of experience, and he is also, by constitution, not allowed to run for president after the 90 days, in which his sole mission would be to organize, to arrange for an election, for electing another president. So if there are concerns that he could use this as a way for him to get through the back door into the presidency, that's out the window. However, the protesters see Ben Saleh as an extension of the Bouteflika era, because he comes from the same town in the west of Algeria, and he might have probably known Bouteflika for so long, to the extent that he became one of the closest allies and friends. So they see him as part of the problem, not part of the solution.
So the question is, do the protesters have a plan, a transition plan that they have tabled, really? Because there has to be a political process, really.
That is the $1 million question, or pound question if you want, because they keep calling for the application of clause 7 and 8 of the Constitution after clause 102. But 7 and 8 are merely procedural principles rather than anything tangible that people can follow. It says, they say that the source of power is the people, and the people exercise this power through their truly elected representatives, i.e. Parliament. So, in other words, what is the plan? If you don't want Parliament, if you don't want the institutions as they stand, what is the plan? Some people in the opposition are coming up with a new proposal saying, how about there would be, we form a constitutional or presidential body, council of people nominated by the protesters and some people who are part of the opposition who can be accepted by the protesters. But how are they going to elect that? What's the process? Is anybody's guess.
No one knows. Okay, so I wonder though, because they are sustaining these protests really, and I wonder how patient, say, the military is going to be with them. Are they going to wait it out? Are they going to tolerate the protests?
Credit to the military and its senior officers. They have really withstood a lot of challenges, and so far they have succeeded in staying on the outside of the conflict. They have not really been dragged into any sort of confrontation or anything. However, that patience could run out very soon if the decision is that the protesters wanted the president to go. Now the president is no longer there. There is a constitutional process that we are following, and that has been called for by the army chief. So we are following the constitutional process. What else do you want? Then, if the people keep challenging that without coming up with a credible alternative and a clear roadmap, as it were, a way forward, then things could get a little bit dicey, and maybe we may see, as we've seen today for the first time ever, the police, the riot police, using water cannons and a little bit of violence against protesters.
All right, Nahed Abu Zaid, thank you very much indeed for your thoughts and insights. Thank you. Well, Sudan's Vice President Awad Mohammed bin Auf has warned that the army will not tolerate any security lapses that may cause the country to slip into chaos. Now, earlier in the day, security forces attempted yet again to break up protests calling for the resignation of President Omar al-Bashir. Now, they are in their fourth consecutive day. The international community has also weighed in. Britain, America and Norway have released a joint statement saying the Sudanese authorities must now respond and deliver a credible plan for this political transition. Well, the BBC's Ansoy reports.
The moment security forces tried yet again to disperse crowds, organizers of the protests say there have been a number of deaths. Among the casualties are soldiers. Here, they appear to return fire as civilians take cover inside their premises. But the leader of the Joint Chiefs of Staff is downplaying reports of divisions between the military and the National Intelligence Security Forces. He said the armed forces would confront those who try to compromise national security. But scenes like this tell a different story. Some in the lower ranks have openly declared their stand.
This is a message to my brothers in the armed forces. These people, these protesters, are our brothers as well. I ask them to come and stand by the side of the people here, the Sudanese people.
People in the street now for 4 months. For 4 months, these people are demonstrating, asking for the regime change. We need the international community really to stand up and say, hey, we are watching you guys. Any blood on your hand, we will go after you everywhere.
These have been the biggest protests ever seen during President al-Bashir's 30-year rule. They have vowed to camp here, right next to the president's compound, until he steps down. Anne Soy, BBC News.
Well, let's take a look now at other stories making headlines. The World Health Organization is reporting that 47 people have been killed in the recent days of fighting on the outskirts of Libya's capital, Tripoli. Most of the dead were combatants, but 9 were civilian. At least 20 people have been killed when 2 villages were attacked in KADUNA state in what is suspected to be a series of revenge attacks between Fulani cattle herders and local farmers. Police have banned all mining activity in the area as they launch an operation in search of the culprits. Dozens of people in Cameroon have defied a ban on protests and taken to the streets of the capital, Yaoundé, calling for the release of the detained opposition politician Maurice Kamto. Mr. Kamto was arrested along with dozens of supporters of the opposition MRC party and was charged with sedition, insurrection and inciting violence. Now, starting this week, London is imposing a charge on drivers with older, more polluting cars in a bid to clean up our air. Now, could the move be replicated elsewhere? In West Africa, fuel can contain up to 300 times more toxic substances than in Europe, which means air pollution is increasing fast and impacting those who are vulnerable. Well, the BBC's Louise Dewast reports from Senegal, where more and more children are turning up in hospitals with respiratory conditions.
2-year-old Tai suffers from asthma, a condition worsened by air pollution. Next to her is 9-year-old Muhammad, who is also asthmatic. Muhammad was brought by his mother to see Professor Idriss Abba, one of the few experts here specialized in respiratory conditions.
It's a nightmare. It's really scary when I hear my son gasp, when he struggles to breathe. It's just scary.
Dr. Ba has worked at the hospital for 15 years. He says the situation is really bad.
Every day we have more patients. Every day we have cases with asthma attacks, on average 5 up to 6 a day. Before, it was not like that. We are seeing with our statistics that the numbers are really increasing, and we believe it's linked to air pollution, well, to air quality, which is very bad.
And he's right, several times a year, Dakar gets covered in dust. That's natural pollution, which can cause the air to exceed by 7 times the level of small particles recommended by the World Health Organization. There are also harmful fumes, mainly from cars, and scientists say they contain small particles that make breathing problems worse. And according to experts, air pollution in countries like Senegal causes more than half of acute respiratory infections in children under 5.
One of the problems here is that cars are often old and second-hand, meaning they pollute more. This taxi, for example, is 37 years old. The other problem is that fuel and gasoline imported and used here have much higher levels of sulfur than in Europe or in the United States, meaning that cars here emit more of a toxic gas considered a major pollutant.
The government has limited taxi licenses to try and reduce the number of old cars, and there are also discussions to lower the levels of sulfur in fuels by the end of the year. Senegal is one of the only countries in Africa that monitors and publishes the quality of its air daily. And when the air is really bad, they send out alerts to residents to stay indoors. But it hasn't resulted in significant policy changes, and until then, children will continue to be vulnerable to the air they breathe. Louise Dewast, BBC News, Dakar.
Well, air pollution is a problem facing many cities across the continent. Let's go now to Sierra Leone's capital, Freetown, and speak to the mayor, Yvonne Akisoya. Thanks for taking time to talk to us on the program. I know that you mainly deal with waste management and sanitation, but what do people in Freetown tell you, particularly about the issue of air pollution?
Air pollution is is an increasingly important challenge for us here in Freetown. And our sources, just listening to the Senegal report, are very similar in terms of the cars. But there's also another dimension, which is the waste management. So we've got, unfortunately, a situation where we've got 2 dump sites which are over 40 years old. And if what you have is effectively just open pollution, where they themselves, the dump sites, constantly go up in flames. In the course of this last week, we've had to put out fires at both dump sites twice. So that's 40 years worth of methane and waste which has been just dumped there consistently. We also continue to have a challenge with citizens not yet understanding the dangers of burning their waste. So in the days when waste was mainly organic, it would have been less of a problem. But with quote unquote development, we find more and more plastic in the system, e-waste, tires. So what is being burnt really is a toxic mixture, and the fumes which are emitted from that really challenge the air quality.
All right.
Wood and charcoal burning is also a problem.
Yeah. Are you working with any authorities, and what kind of solutions are you putting forward to be able to deal with it or to measure the level of pollution?
So at the moment as a city council, so I guess we're an authority, and we aren't yet measuring, but we're in discussions with hospital charity, which is currently doing measuring in Accra, to start to do that in Freetown. I also know that the Road Safety Authority are interested in this, and we're likely to partner together. But on a practical level, we are ensuring that we tackle safe waste disposal as a means of preventing both the burning and the open dumping. With the burning, it's shorter term. So here we're doing very practical things, like introducing the cleanest zone competition, where there are clear guidelines which help communities to understand that they shouldn't burn, and they get positive compensation, as in prizes, for keeping the environment clean in a safe way.
Right.
In respect of the dumping, we are actually now building landfills.
All right, we have to leave it there, but thank you very much. I see you are making some strides in that direction of clean air in Freetown. Yvonne Aki-Sawyer, Mayor of Freetown, thanks for joining us on Focus on Africa. Thank you. Now, this is Focus on Africa from BBC World News with me, Sophie Ikenya. Still to come, all the sports news. The Nigerian Football Federation offers to help ailing former captain and coach Christian Chukwu. I'm Sophie Ikenya, and you're watching Focus on Africa from BBC World News. The top stories on this program. New protests have broken out in Algeria after an interim head of state was appointed to replace President Bouteflika, who was forced to resign last week. There is growing international concern over the situation in Sudan, where protests calling for President Omar al-Bashir to leave office have intensified. You're watching BBC Focus on Africa. Let's find out what's happening in the world of sport. Peter.
Many thanks, Sophie. And Algeria midfielder Nabil Bentaleb resumed training with Schalke's first team today, 3 weeks after he was dropped for disciplinary reasons. The 24-year-old was sent to train with the Bundesliga's club under-23 team for unspecified reasons. Interim coach Hugh Stevens says Bentaleb's behaviour has improved. Bentaleb last played for Schalke in their 7-0 defeat to Manchester City last month in the last 16th phase of the European Champions League. Morocco defender Hamza Mendil, who was also dropped from the Schalke first squad last Friday for disciplinary reasons, is still training with the club's under-23 team. Meanwhile, Bentaleb's Algeria compatriot Nassim Boujalab has signed the first professional contract of his career with Schalke until June 2022. The 19-year-old made his Bundesliga debut against Hannover 96 on March the 31st. Now, the Nigeria Football Federation has offered to help ailing former captain and coach Christian Chukwu. The 68-year-old has been trying to raise $50,000 in order to travel to the United States for treatment. Chukwu captained the Super Eagles to their first Africa Cup of Nations title in 1980 and was national team coach between 2002 and 2005. He was also assistant to Dutchman Clemens Westerhof as the Super Eagles won their second continental title in 1994. The man, fondly known as the chairman, also managed Lebanese club Safa FC in 1997 and the Kenyan national team in 1998. Now, quite a bit of African interest as the quarter-final stage of the European Champions League kicks off in just over an hour with 2 matches. Egypt star Mo Salah and his Senegalese teammate Sadio Mane will be hoping to turn on the style they have been showing all season as Liverpool host Portuguese side FC Porto. The Reds are top of the Premier League with 5 games remaining, and they beat tonight's opponents 5-0 in the round of 16 in last year's competition. But manager Jurgen Klopp says that means nothing.
I'm not really interested in it. I know my players now well enough, and they don't think about things like that. They only want to, they are completely focused on the job to do.
Well, Porto also have their own African contingent in Cameroon for Vincent Aboubakar, Moussa Marega from Mali, and midfielders Marius Moudanmadji from Chad and Senegal's Mamadou Loum. Tonight's other game looks more like a Premier League tie, with Tottenham taking on title-chasing Manchester City. This is City's 52nd competitive match of the season and comes on the back of Saturday's FA Cup semi-final win over Brighton. Now, let's tell you about a one-of-a-kind car rally. It's only for women and it takes place in the Sahara. BBC Sport Africa's Celestine Carone has been to meet the drivers.
The Rally Aisha de Gazelle is a competition like no other. 157 female-only teams racing with only a map and a compass. It's a race where navigation is more important than speed. And when you are in the middle of the Sahara Desert, that's not easy. The teams descend on the desert in Morocco, some 545 kilometers from the capital Rabat. They do 6 legs, traveling over 800 kilometers. The rally highlights growing opportunities for women in motorsport, but the Rally Aisha de Gazelle isn't brand new. It's been going since 1990, but much has changed since then.
It was very, very difficult. I really struggled to convince people that it's serious. Because speed is a reference point for motorsport. And if you don't have speed, it's just a girl's day out.
It's my second time. I do it in 2015. Sometimes I'm driving, she's doing navigation. Sometimes she drives, I do the navigation. We do everything together.
So in a rally where there is no emphasis on speed, how is the winner decided? The aim of the rally is to reach all the checkpoints in the shortest possible distance. It's clearly a tough race, but teams can get help from each other in the Gazelle spirit. Help from organizers, though, results in a penalty. And the desert can be unpredictable.
It was complicated today, very complicated, because of an incident. I would not say serious, but quite impressive. It was, for me, my biggest fear, very scary.
At the finish line, an overwhelming sense of pride and relief, returning to life away from the harshness of the desert.
Looks like absolute fun. Sofian, you've done a bit of rallying yourself.
I have done a bit of rallying.
So which were you, the driver or the navigator?
No, I was the driver, Peter.
Fantastic.
But I had
stuff.
a fantastic navigator.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
all right.
Good for you.
But don't forget, you can get in touch with me on Twitter. I'm @CKenyan. That's all from the program, from me and the rest of the team. Thank you for your company. Bye.